Well, I am very excited to be here with Dave Dictor of M.D.C. Dave, thank you so much for being with us here in the streets here in downtown Atascadero, California on the Central Coast. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much. Here we are, we're keeping it real on Atascadero.
Definitely keeping it real. And Dave, I have so many questions for you tonight. But first of all, you are holding in your wonderful hands there your memoir biography, which is Memoir from a Damaged Civilization. And that just published like a month or two back, right?
That's right. It actually came out about, we're having the book release party Wednesday in Berkeley. It's been officially out for maybe 4 weeks now. I insisted I get some because we toured last month. And then, well, why are we going to go on tour and not promote the book? And happy to say I've been able to, sell between 20 and 30 books a gig, and I usually do a little book reading, and I will tonight as well.
Excellent. Yeah, I saw a lot of fans at your merch booth tonight, definitely gobbling up a lot of your merch, but in particular the book itself. And I've done a little research on it. I look forward to reviewing it on inneredgemusic.com. But I've read some reviews, and really positive reviews on Amazon.com. 5 stars. A lot of people saying basically this is, in some respects, better than even like Henry Rollins' Get in the Van and other punk rock memoirs, and really positive feedback from fans, right?
Well, thanks. I have read a few of those Amazon interviews, and people have been saying really sweet things to me. To be fair to Henry and to anyone else, he wrote that book as more of a tour diary on tour in the 80s, and I got to reflect on this 30 years. But I found it important for me to share where I came from and what was going on in my head in 4th grade and 7th grade and high school that led me to, I knew right away I wanted to make music and go around. And we were talking before about how I had my acoustic guitar. And
I was gonna say that
mid-70s, and I played a lot of Bob Dylan type things. And
we talked
still a big Steve Earle fan. But I'll put that plug in.
Definitely. Big ups to Steve Earle. And we talked off camera earlier before the film started rolling about kind of your early influences. Kind of a singer-songwriter who would travel around and really influenced by that early sort of political aspects of folk music, really, right?
Yeah, there was definitely a Woody Guthrie component that went into what I was doing, and I found myself at the tail end of the anti-Vietnam War movement, the anti-Richard Nixon movement, and the beginning of the anti-nuclear power movement in the mid-late 70s. And I found myself floating down to Austin, Texas, with my acoustic guitar, and I was like, just standing in front of clubs, and I guess the kids call it busking now, but I was just out there, whether it was at the bus station or at a club called Raoul's, which was a Chicano club that ended up becoming quite a punk rock hotspot with the Dicks and the Big Boys. And it just was happening around me. Everything from you start hearing about the Sex Pistols, and they came to Texas, and I was living in Texas, having grown up in New York, and of course you're hearing about Talking Heads, The Clash, Blondie, Ramones, Devo, all that stuff was affecting me, and I was very tired of the stadium rock shtick that was going on in the mid-late 70s. It had its moments. It was fun, but I remember seeing The Who and not realizing Peter Townsend had a cast on his arm. Oh, wow. I mean, it was so far away. I was probably 50, 60 yards away. And
we interviewed Captain Sensible, Dave Vanian, recently at the Roxy in Los Angeles, and they talked about that. I mean, in the sort of the degree to which the punk rock movement was kind of a reaction of the indulgence of the 70s prog rock bands and the Who really and all that kind of stuff.
And it really was. And people talk about it as well. The music got so intricate, and and you had to be so great. And then a lot of us, let's take it back down to 3 chords, sing your guts out about what you're feeling, and we're not all going to sound like Freddie Mercury, and we're not, and I love Freddie Mercury, but just you're not going to play guitar like Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan. but still you have something to share with your guitar, and and obviously in Texas bands like the Butthole Surfers, and Gibby Haynes and Paul of that band, had something to share that obviously moved a new generation, and they weren't technically Jimmy Page or that ilk, but they were the astounding musician, experimental, and Sonic Youth would be typical of that.
Definitely.
And then it did build up. And the Dead Kennedys were a great band. Black Flag, a great band. Circle Jerks, a great band. Bad Brains, a great band. And M.D.C. threw our hat in the ring, and we were the Stains first and became M.D.C. And
Also a great band, for the record. Yeah, I got to throw that in there. Yes.
Well, thank you. And anyway, I'm showing the book up here.
Yeah.
It's on Manic D Press. I want to put that for my editor, publisher, who believed in me and spent hours and hours on the phone with me. And
well, Dave, I wanted to ask you about the book. I mean, we've interviewed some folks that have done biographies or have written different things. Hugh Cornwall from the Stranglers, Ben Watt from Everything But the Girl. And I wanted to ask you about the creative process. I mean, being such a evocative lyricist who's able to kind of paint such a rich picture of things, both political and personal. What was it like for you to actually write this book? I mean, was it easy? Did it flow out, or was it a little bit? Did it bring up certain feelings?
I had a lot of stories. I felt like, and I just never had a chance to put them down. So I had this thing called Millions of Dead Columnists, and I would talk about everything from working at UPS to being a special ed teacher, and a
lot of people don't realize. I'd read your bio in the late '90s. Went back to school to get a teaching credential, correct?
Yes, I did. I started. It was always kind of in the plan in my life.
And it really fits in with kind of your political activism, giving back to the underserved, kind of having an influence, right?
And I like to look at special ed as and punk rock. There is a connection. There's an ADD. Restlessness that, unable to sit in a classroom in the same chair for 3 hours at a time, that I've noticed that same restlessness with, my punk brethren. And I share some of that myself, just the inability to shut my mouth and not, whatever, whether it's during the Pledge of Allegiance or whether it's talking about police or apartheid in South Africa or vegetarianism. Or prison sentences for nonviolent drug-related offenses. And I hope Obama lets a lot more people out of prison. He's done a few different things, and I hear 34 here and 65 there. But, we're a country with hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people in jail all across this country on a federal and a state level for victimless drug-related crimes.
For a first world nation, we have the most populace in prison, other than China, but China's a communist country.
I think it's even more than China as well, if you look at that statistic. On a per-person level, there's more people in jail in China, but there's also 1.5 billion people. But in California, it's an incredible rate of incarceration. And speaking truth to power, that's my angle of where I came into punk. It was as well about sexuality and themes and not wanting to get squished into the status quo.
I mean, you guys were definitely, for the record, one of the early political punk bands that really took a stand against the homophobia, in the punk scene. I mean,
kind of famous in the book how we played with the Bad Brains in 1982. They were playing Texas. We met each other and we went down to Houston, Texas to play, and we were, we actually met them just like a few days before, and they said, "Why don't you join us on tour?" And they really loved our no war, no KKK, aware that the cops abuse minorities, and just our more human rights oriented topics in our songwriting. But they had a streak of Coptic Christianity in there that was more than just we don't like gay people. It was like blood-clot faggots deserve to die.
You heard the term faggot in a lot of early punk rock stuff.
I couldn't abide by it. And there was a piece of me that has a fluid sexuality, feel part of the queer community. I've done drag at times in my life. I've, in my own head, to describe it, my sexuality in my own head can go in so many different directions. It's not labeled down to I am this.
It's not binary. It's on a continuum, so to speak.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm not into that until you do it, and then you're into it.
Don't knock it till you try it. Truer words have never been said from Dick here tonight.
You hear so many people say, I would never do that, and then until you do it, and then you've done it. I think it's a big thing coming out right now with the trans community and the intersex community as well, and the continuum. And
I mean, do you have fans coming up at your shows from the LGBTQ community that say, "Hey, man, Dave, you were a huge influence, man. You were speaking truth to power when nobody else was talking about my identity issues, whatever."
Many people. I'd say on a tour, anywhere from 10 to 20 people. Wow. And there's a band called Gloss, who is a trans hardcore band. Okay. And we've been one of the people that walk the walk and talk the talk, and and just told people you're wrong about that, in the early hardcore there was streaks of homophobia / racism in there. And we just, part of our truth to power was that you're wrong, and here we are 20, 30 years later, 60% of the population is for gay marriage. In 1982, in 1980, 1978, it was not like that. It was, 25 to 27% were in favor of freedom of sexuality.
I think history will show that M.D.C. was a band that really had a vision of progressive politics. You guys were right. I mean, looking back at the Reagan era, all the things that protesting the Pope's visit to San Francisco, doing things, sticking your neck out in ways that other bands weren't willing to do at the time.
I think the songs we sing about the multi-death corporation, about corporate death burger, about vegetarianism with chicken squawk, about social alienization, like my family's a little weird, or I hate work, or or about the landlord raising your rent. It's kind of funny, when I wrote the song Greedy and Pathetic about the landlord raising our rent, it went from $85 to $95. I don't know who's paying.
Now we laugh at that. Yeah, that was really hardcore, man, back then.
We just played in the Bay Area, and it's incredible what people are paying.
A closet costs $1,500. A little closet, yeah. Well, Dave, I want to ask you a question. This is a question that I asked Dick from the Subhumans, a band just like M.D.C. I really respect Dick's lyricism, his ability, and I saw in your merch booth a split that you guys have done with Citizen Fish.
With Citizen Fish and the Subhumans over the last years. We just played with them at a festival. Well, we've played with them in the last year twice at big festivals in England, and we're going back to the Rebellion Fest this year. Excellent. It's a big American invasion thing going on with Off and the Adolescents and the Dwarves and a lot of bands, Dictators and Adolescents, and I know I'm leaving out a ton of them. DRI.
Lots of great classics. Well, Dave, one question I asked Dick was, looking back on the lyricism and all the themes in both of your band's works through the years, there's a lot of targets. A lot of people were called out. A lot of systems of oppression, personal, political, animal rights, social stratification, et cetera, et cetera. So here we are, many decades since some of those first lyrics were put down on paper. And what do you, looking back, I mean, are all of those targets still legitimate targets to be rallying against? Are there new targets? What would you say were like the top three sort of forces of oppression that are still existing in the 21st century?
For one, racism, and for two, homophobia. This country was built on 400 years of slavery and racism, segregation. The whole idea that it can be washed away in a relatively short amount of decades is laughable, and hence it's bared out by all the police-related issues that have come out in Ferguson, Missouri, in Charleston, South Carolina, all over the frickin' place, where African American people or people of color or just regular people are put in chokeholds and killed, and this whole where they don't shoot to slow people down, they shoot them to kill, and they're trained. I think it has to, be, change those policies. And I think the whole thing, we're putting video cams on police cars and on policemen's bodies to monitor what the hell is going on. And they've started doing that, and the amount of abusive behavior has gone down incredibly.
When you know that when the watcher is being watched, it does tend to influence behavior, definitely. Yeah.
Yep. It's Mike Smith. He's the bass player of M.D.C., my roommate, and a great guy. We've been making music together in M.D.C. for 10 years.
Almost
We,
11 next
we
year.
have an M.D.C. country project where we slow down some of the M.D.C. hardcore electric songs, and we've written a bevy of new songs.
I would love to hear some of that stuff. Mike, what's it been like to tour with this guy over the years? Man, really amazing lyricist, amazing sort of inspiration to so many people out there, right?
Of course. No, he's amazing. He's the man. He's the man with the plan. He changed the world if he can. That's a song right there. Anyway, no. Dave is just he's a visionary. I mean, he puts his music with his heart, and it's just a lot better than a lot of other people that are doing the punk rock thing and thinking, oh, it's just like party and bullshit. It's actually with depth and thought and love and life, and it's awesome.
It's good stuff, right?
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
Dave, I know we got to get going here in a second, but a couple other questions for you. And I'm sure you covered it in your memoir, and I'm really looking forward to reading that, man, and doing a review on Inner Edge Music. Let me officially, look forward to the full review on inneredgemusic.com. But M.D.C., the first U.S. punk band to ever play in Russia. I mean, that is some historic.
I write about it in the book.
All right. Any teasers for folks out there that might be interested in hearing about that? I mean, because that's such an interesting thing about so many barriers were broke by M.D.C. And what was it like when you went to Russia? I mean, were there fans that had been exposed? Because I'm sure punk rock and rock and roll in Russia was basically outlawed. So folks that were familiar with your stuff had to be familiar through sort of illegal channels.
Actually, and it's been that way for years because people probably learned English from Beatle albums, and Rolling Stone albums. And of course, here we are coming decades after that. So amazing how some people speak very good English in Russia. It was a wonderful experience. People were so ready in 1993 to experience the freedoms and liberation and not being a totalitarian state. It's a little unfortunate that economic control and just what went on with Putin and authoritarian.
Former KGB member, basically. It'd be like a George Bush, former CIA member, George Bush Sr. Being in president.
Yeah, but Putin's really heavy, and the punks I know there really have a hard time, and Pussy Riot, which is a great thing is going on there. I met one of the people on Pussy Riot.
I've read reviews where you definitely give them shout outs. It's kind of the an example of punk rock in the 21st century. Just DIY, a couple young females doing their thing.
Yeah,
man.
I spoke to their entourage backstage, and they definitely knew who M.D.C. was.
Yeah.
So, it's amazing how we affect each other. Going to a culture like Russia was just totally wonderful. But, we've traveled to Brazil, we've traveled to a lot of backwaters, and it's always great how music and cultural awareness and freedom and animal rights and ecological movements, all kind of, doesn't matter if you're American or Russian or whatever, and just basically the idea that we all want to be happy, we all want to create art, we all want to raise our children in peace, love the people we want to love. Wonderful. I had a really wonderful experience there. It's in the book. We at the end we played in Kaliningrad, and I waved our ride off, and we're coming through the border on the way home. And I find out at the border, no, and yet it's impossible forbidden to leave the country any way different than way you entered with the type visa we had. And I was just there.
Stuck in the USSR there, or in Russia, excuse me, but former.
Left, and we were going to have to, hitchhike back up around Kaliningrad, through the Baltics, back to St. Petersburg, around the sea there, and back into Finland. But we were at that border, and they said it was impossible. I said, "Can I speak to my manager on the phone?" They gave me a dead phone, and I held a handle for a couple minutes, and then I came out and said, the old-fashioned way of just saying, I was told I could buy a special permit from you for $100 a person.
The special permit,
laid
yes.
out of five $100 bills, and they were like starting to say no, no, and by the third, of course.
Yeah, money talks. That's one important lesson from Dave.
Signed what looked like a train schedule, and we were on our way, and we left a couple band T-shirts, a couple cassettes, and
seems like it's a fair exchange. They got to listen to something.
Across the border, walked into Poland, caught a train, and 2 days later we were in Northern Ireland playing Belfast.
All right, very good, very good. Well, that is one of many exciting stories that you too can check out here at Memoirs of a Damaged Civilization. Dave, thank you so much for your time, and again, recommend this book. We'll be reading it very, very soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, too. Bye-bye.